Welcome back, Megalithomaniacs. We're going to be getting into lots of very, very interesting subjects, and our next speaker is a good friend of mine. I've explored Gwynedd in North Wales with him on occasion. He's been doing a lot of research on the star maps of that part of Wales, amongst other things. He's studied astrophysics. He's also an aeronautical engineer, and his book, The Origin of the Zodiac, he presented here a couple of years ago for the first time. But since then, he's become a prolific writer and an explorer, and is also very focused on the astronomy and the astrology of the landscape. And his new book is called The Origins of Time, and you can get that here after the lecture. So please give a warm welcome to Hugh Evans.
Thank you, Hugh. It's great to be back. It's wonderful to have this opportunity to come back to Glastonbury and share my research. I had a fantastic day yesterday, and I hope you all have a great day today. I have just published my new book, which has my up-to-date research, and that is called The Origin of Time and the Great Sirius Observatory. For the first time, the 88 constellations have been explained back to their origin. It was thought that there was no grand design to the constellations, that the constellations were from many cultures and some constellations were of unknown origin. But this is not correct. The heavens are understood completely in one language, the language in which they were created. An ancient people charted the heavens, named the constellations, the stars and the planets, created numbers, shapes, conceptualized time in all its forms, and they did this a very long time ago. As Hugh has just said, at the 2022 conference, I presented my first book, The Origin of the Zodiac, and claimed that the constellations of the modern zodiac were created in Gwynedd, northwest Wales. Here is a map of Gwynedd for those who have not seen the first presentation. The star maps of Gwynedd cover 1 million acres, nearly 2,000 square miles, a quarter of Wales and all of ancient Gwynedd. And I claimed that the star maps of Gwynedd are the most important ancient artifact on Earth because it connects us to an ancient civilization like no other ancient artifact on Earth by language. There are lots of wonderful ancient artifacts on Earth, but this is the only one that connects us by language to an ancient civilization. At my last presentation, I also introduced the 3 great rings of time. They are the ecliptic, measuring time in all its scales, the ring of creation, charting the story of human origins to civilization, and the 3rd ring is the Milky Way. It's our spiritual journey. My new book, The Origin of Time, completes this explanation. All the constellations are placed on the 3 great rings of time. All the constellations are correctly named and placed for their function and in relation to their neighbours. And this was all created by an ancient people in one language. That language we now know as Welsh. It is the living remnant of the language of all ancient Britain, and probably the language that survived, well, tens of thousands of years. I don't know why. Well, it probably survived in this part of the world because of its remoteness. but you can see pieces of this language all over the ancient world. The language remained intact in Wales because of the location, culture, the dedication of the people, and also because of the star maps. The heavens can be interpreted using this ancient language in which they were written, and the first great ring is the ring of the ecliptic. Measuring time in all its scales, it is the metronomic tick-tock from one moment to the next. Understanding this incremental movement enables the past to be recalled accurately, and when combined, ancient people were able to contemplate and plan the future. This was done by observing the sun in the day and the moon at night, understanding the planets and their orbits over millennia, and by creating the signs of the zodiac, so forming the mechanism to measure time in all its scales. And here are the 12 signs of the zodiac on the ground in Wales. My breakthrough in my research was understanding that the rivers of Gwynedd were the ecliptic. They're the rivers of Gwynedd. It's like a flow of energy, and all the constellations of the zodiac are laid out on the ground. You have to read those ground features in Welsh, but they're there. They're all detailed in both my books, and anyone can go back and check the work. I provide all my sources. So an example of one of the 12 constellations of the zodiac is the sign or constellation Pisces. Pisces is from the original Pi-Ks. When it was Latinized, that's C turned into an S sound. Pi is a constraint, an end. Ks is a circle, the ecliptic. That's what Pisces means. And it was associated with a fish, pisk, or a pisk, which has evolved into fish because it sounds very similar to Pisces. In the ancient British tradition, it was also called the salmon of wisdom, because the salmon is a fish that returns to its origin every 12 months, like the zodiac. There is a list of druidic constellations, and the Pisces is Cader Terinon. And through my book, I explain all the names of the constellations back to their origin, the Latin names, their origins, as well as the druidic names, as well as explain all the features of the constellations. So Pisces, the two fish are joined by a ribbon. A ribbon is an uznodden. Uz is a prefix which denotes a tool, operator, or construct. No means what keeps in, a nod is a mark, and the N suffix creates a thing. So the ribbon is telling us this is a tool or an operator that keeps in. This is the end of the 12 signs of the zodiac, starting with Aries. Ancient people knew that some stars moved in repeating cycles. Some stars moved randomly and some stars were fixed. The 4 royal stars remain fixed on the ecliptic, a 3-dimensional framework defined by the 4 royal stars and the pole star was created. This is the framework within which the 12 signs of the zodiac sit on the ecliptic. This is the number 4, with the observer at the centre of the cross at Earth. The royal stars come from Rheol, meaning chiefly or ruling. And as an example, the star Aldebaran is Aldebaran, simply means the Great Southern Summit. So all of these stars are explained in my book, The Origin of Time, and in The Origin of Numbers. The number 4 is pedwar in Welsh, from two smaller words, ped, chwa. Ped is a foot, like pedestrian, or a step or an onward motion. Chwa means to turn. These are the 4 stars on the ecliptic, and we get words like quarter and quator from this ancient word qua. The planets were observed in this framework of constellations and the signs of the zodiac. The same ancient people named the planets. So that is Mercury. Its name is Mercha, and it means the quickest, most erratic, because as viewed from Earth, it is the quickest moving and the most erratic. All the planets have meaning in their names in only one language. The Roman god Mars is from Proto-Latin Mawrth, from Etruscan Mawrth, and that is explained only in Welsh, which is very similar to Etruscan. By monitoring the luminaries of heaven against the constellations of the zodiac, a unique time can be generated. My previous Megalithomania presentation was 5/4 of the moon after the spring equinox, Venus and Jupiter in Pisces, Mars and Saturn in Aquarius. This is a unique time. It does not need a start point. Having mapped the heavens, mapping the earth must have been easy. This ancient people conceived and named the Arctic, latitude, longitude, the equator, and altitude. Arctic is Arctid, the toppermost region. Antarctic, opposite the toppermost region. Ancient people conceived latitude and longitude long before the Greeks and Eratosthenes, who is credited with this discovery. He copied it and then moved it to Alexandria and messed it up. Chlong is made from 2 words. Chl, where, a place, and on, which means continuity. A chlongitude is a place of continuity. There's only one explanation in one language. The same people defined and named polar, tropic, zenith, nadir, azimuth, and degrees, as well as the polar directions and their colours. All important parts of time were designed from dawn to dusk. All are explained in The Origin of Time, as are the calendar, the year, the months, the week, the days, hour, minute, second, and moment. This ancient verbal language, which is incredibly resilient, is made of components shared across the entire language. It is impossible to make up words and retrofit them into the language because it would change the meaning of all the other words. By example, the root word ao is a flow. It is the root of yeo and hour. We are told that the English word hour is from the Greek hour, and there is no intrinsic meaning in the Greek. But in the Welsh, you can see the intrinsic meaning. Similarly, noon and now. Now is still the word today in Welsh for now. And its meaning is no flow. And it is a perfect definition of now, when time has stopped still. All the nodes of the year were named by this people. The quarter days, Easter, from Ustra, a course, a turn. This is the start of the ancient New Year at the spring equinox. Litha, Mabon and Yule, all using the same system as the cross-quarter days. Beltane is from Baltan, simply means the spread of shoots and buds. Very simple, very elegant, and the same system is used for Lammas, Samhain and Imbolc. Yes, Beltane is a fire festival today because Tan also means fire. And in that society or culture, it makes perfect sense for them, but I'm presenting the origin. Once the concept of a ticking mechanism of time had been established, the next physical ring of time could be created, and not before. You have to have a concept of moving time before you can go on to the next concept. The next great ring is the ring of creation. Time from the perspective of the rise of civilization from its primordial origins. The constellations of the ring of creation are mapped on the ground in Gwynedd. Some I identified in my first book, The Origin of the Zodiac, and I have completed this in The Origin of Time. I stopped with in The Origin of the Zodiac because at that point I believed that the southern constellations would not be present in Gwynedd, but they are there. And ancient people mapped the southern constellations, even though for very long periods of time they're invisible in Wales. The ring of creation is in two parts. The beginning of civilization and the first part is the beginning of a civilization after a great cataclysm. It is the same creation recounted in the fragments of the Babylonian Enuma Elish, the oldest written story. But the story of creation in the constellations of Gwynedd is much older, and it's not in fragments. It is complete. The ring of creation starts with the line of Hydra, the sea snake. It is the longest constellation in the heavens and is specifically designed to isolate the next constellations from other constellations in the heavens. The main part of this ring are the Bootes and Virgo group. These male and female constellations are the prime progenitors of humankind. These progenitors use the plough, harnessed to the bull, to plough the great field, a metaphor of planting seed to grow into a multitude. This is the re-emergence of civilization. The roles of Bootes and Virgo are described in their names, like all the constellations. Bootes, the spread and the succour of life. Virgo, Gwir, means pure, lively and fertile. And when it was Latinized, the Romans couldn't say Gwr, so they just said the. Gura is to take a husband. The great field is the emerging civilization on the mortal plane, bounded at the four corners by the same royal stars of the ecliptic. And beyond the sides of the great field, the four sides of the great field, are the rivers of creation, beyond and below. This is the ancient understanding of the universe. Here are two images, examples from my book. There's a star map on the left showing the Bootes, Virgo and the associated constellations, and also an equivalent montage on the left. You can see Bootes there, also called the hunter. All these names are discussed and explained, holding the rod next to the ring. Virgo is holding the frond and the wheat sheath to represent fertility. And these are greyhounds. All are explained. Here are a number of rods and scepters, rings and orbs over the millennia. They are symbols of authority. There is the Shen ring, which is a combination of a ring and a rod. And then I think that's Inanna and Hammurabi. These are all Babylonian, about 4,000 years old. Then we have the Holy Roman Emperor and various other monarchs. The present UK regalia and a Prussian eagle holding an orb and a scepter with an eagle on top of it that's also holding a scepter and an orb. The second part of the Ring of Creation is the Great Flood. It chronicles the rise of humanity from our spiritual origins after the Great Flood, returning by the ark of the great ship on the river Heaven, the sending of the dove, which we're all familiar with, and returning civilization, which also culminates at the Great Field. We're starting there at the southern celestial pole and moving back up to the Great Field. That's the other half of the circle. We now know the Great Field constellation as Pegasus, the horse. When the Greeks came along, they were in a difficult situation because all the constellations existed before them and they wanted to set up an empire. So they started renaming or repurposing the constellations. They changed the Pegasus to a horse, but kept the name. Peg-Cas means quartered enclosure, which is the Great Field. The third and final great ring is the continuous spiritual journey of the Milky Way. It is the journey of the soul as an individual, as the collective, as a repository of spirit. It is the mortal nourishment. And when souls pass, it is also the last voyage. The ring of the Milky Way is a metaphysical construct. You cannot create the Milky Way without having first created the other two rings. You need to have the metronomic physical ring of the ecliptic and also a concept of a journey of civilization. We need those created first. But the third great ring, the Milky Way, completes the celestial sphere, which would collapse without three rings. Here is the constellations of the Milky Way on the ground in Gwynedd. The Milky Way comes in from the west. This is the spirit world. It then crosses the ecliptic and goes into the mortal world, crosses the ecliptic again and goes into the underworld. And these are the three spiritual planes and their colours. White, which is Gwyn, hence Gwynedd, the green for the mortal world, and blue for the underworld, where the rivers of creation are. Spirit emanates from the south celestial pole and the important constellation, the important Centaurus group of constellations. The Centaurus group is located at the extreme southern point on both the creation ring and the Milky Way. The whole Centaurus group is not visible in Wales. It must have been created at the opposite end of the precessionary cycle 12,000 years ago at the earliest, and even then it was only partially visible at this northerly latitude. Yet Ara, the altar constellation, Lupus, the wolf, and Centaurus with its associated crux are mapped accurately on the ground in Gwynedd, yet they are invisible from Gwynedd. Centaurus was specifically located on Mount Snowdon, the highest mountain in Wales, there. You can't move mountains around afterwards when you start building a star map. You have to start with, an important thing, put it on a high mountain. And the constellations Ara and Lupus seem created as part of the group solely to include prominent mountains next to Centaurus atop Snowdon. The constellations Ara and Lupus only exist to reflect the ground in Gwynedd. Important to this location and the Milky Way is the concept of spirit or gwyth. Snowdon's ancient name is Withfa. The fa suffix creates a place, the place of spirit. Gwyth also means stock, stem, branch, and implies lineage. That is why the depictions in Greece and in Britain show Centaurus holding a branch. Lupus the wolf has been renamed. It used to be the wild animal. A wild animal is a gwyth fil, gwyth meaning spirited. A goose is also a gwyth. All meanings are from the same root, gwi, a fluid or flow, and in this context it means spirit. There is Pillar 18, Enclosure D, Göbekli Tepe, with 7 geese. This is the oldest Egyptian hieroglyph showing a goose with the sun, and this motif is carried through right to the end of the Egyptian dynasties. The Milky Way is a vast travelator of spirit called Arwen. It crosses the ecliptic into the mortal world, creating the spark of life for the individual. It rises to the top of the heavens, pouring nourishment and goodness into the mortal world. The Milky Way then descends down to the ecliptic and crosses with souls of those who have passed into the underworld below, to return again to the west on the great ship, and to Centaurus, the great repository of spirit, Gwyth, at the south celestial pole, a never-ending circle of goodness and a wonderful construct by ancient people. It gives you an indication of their beliefs and how much thought they must have put into this. All the constellations in each ring can be explained back to their origin. The same language can be used to go back in time to understand the creation of the heavens. Back 70,000 years to an unknown cataclysm when DNA records indicate the global population diminished to approximately 10,000 adults. This may be the reason why a single language emerged and was destined to chart the heavens. So let's go back in time to understand where these origins have come from, and let's take that journey with the star Sirius. Sirius is the brightest star in the heavens today. It is also the fastest moving star in the heavens, and ancient people have been fascinated with Sirius over vast stretches of time, and we still are fascinated with Sirius. Ancient people watched the movement of Sirius over perhaps 100,000 years. They understood the movement, they mapped the movement, and they explained this in their stories and also in how they named Sirius. The astronomer Ptolemy, who circa 150 of the current era, when he created his star catalogue to standardise the constellations in the Roman Empire, reported that Sirius was red. And he was very specific about this, citing previous astronomers from all over the Roman Empire. It wasn't a matter of contention at that time. Sirius has since changed colour to blue. This only happens if Sirius is redshifted when receding away from us and then changes direction to being blue shifted as Sirius now approaches us. Our ancient ancestors observed these repeating cycles and deduced that Sirius is in a 25,000 year binary orbit with our sun. So you can imagine how many times they must have had to witness this repeating cycle to determine that it is repeating. Sirius's colour has recently changed over this 25,000 year cycle. Therefore, it is furthest from us and moving slowest in its orbit. This is the Latin name for Sirius. This is the one we use today. It's from the Greek Sirios, and this is from an older civilization from the root ser, meaning to be harnessed. Sirius is harnessed with our sun. The Romans also worshipped Mithras. Mithras means swiftness and velocity. Sirius is the fastest moving star in the heavens. The Romans also created the constellation Canis Major, where Sirius is now located. It didn't really have a constellation before that, and that is because Sirius moves about a lot. But kun is a dog, and it also means to be coupled, because ancient people associated dog with being coupled to a human as a work unit. And this is the origin of Sirius's name, the dog star. Going back to the Greeks, nemesis is from nemethus, a going causes turning. Again, a reference to Sirius's orbit with our sun, and that is particular. There are no other stars in such a close relationship with our sun. And we can go back to the Babylonians, Nibiru, top summit, fury, on a short spit, which represents a short orbit. This is the Egyptian hieroglyphs for Sirius, and the SPT of those three glyphs are Ser, star, Puis, balance, and Tidmui, tether. Sirius is in a balanced, tethered relationship with our sun. Let's go back 12,000 years to the time of Göbekli Tepe. Our ancient ancestors observed that Sirius had moved to a new position in the night sky. If Sirius is in a binary relationship with our sun, halfway round this 25,000 year cycle, it will be on the opposite side of the heavens. This is where Sirius is today in Canis Major. 7 hours right ascension, minus 20 degrees declination. There are 24 hours of right ascension all the way around the heavens, around the celestial equator. So on the opposite side of the heavens, we just add 12. So we should be looking at 19 hours right ascension, and we want to go above the celestial equator, so we go from minus 20 to plus 20 degrees declination. And this is what we find. Sirius is now in the constellation Aquila and Sagitta. Whereas Sirius is now 8 light years from our Sun, at the opposite end of its orbit, it is only 2 light years from our Sun or closer. It will be 100 times brighter than it currently is. It will be brighter than Venus, as bright as half of the moon. You may be able to read by it at night, and you will be able to see it during daylight. You may actually be able to see the changing brightness of Sirius over its 50-year cycle with its own binary partner, Sirius B. And this may be how the Dogons have managed to understand that Sirius has a binary partner. They've maintained this through their verbal tradition for thousands of years. That shows you the resilience of a verbal tradition by a small community. It also gives us some indication to the yogic cycles. This will be the cycle of the golden part of the yogic cycle of enlightenment when Sirius is very close to us. The constellation Sagitta is the arrow. The constellation Aquila is the eagle. Sagitta means sa, what is fixed, a star, ge, a holdfast, ta, superior. It is the point on the orbit which is closest, superior to us, held fast. Sagitta. This was then adopted into Latin as an arrow. This is also a Babylonian boundary stone from about 3,000 years ago, showing Sirius as an eagle and an arrow. In my book, The Origin of Numbers, I identify Sirius as the number 7. The word for 7 is safe, and the word for an arrow is safe. They are phonetically identical. Aquila is shown on Pillar 43, Enclosure D of Göbekli Tepe. There is Aquila. The bottom of this T pillar is the ecliptic. That's Scorpio. This means that ancient people had a fundamental understanding of the ecliptic. The nearest position of Sirius is shown on Pillar 43. It is there for us to see today. Aquila is holding Sirius, as it is in the heavens when Sirius is closest to us. And this is the correct presentation of Sirius 12,000 years ago, when ancient people observed Sirius from Göbekli Tepe. Observation of the heavens at Göbekli Tepe was an advanced capability. Tepe means beacon in this ancient language. Tep, pe, a projecting rock or outcrop, and the pe word creates an agent, a construct. There are several words for hill and mountain in Turkish. These key locations are called tepes. There is a clear connection between these sites. They are not isolated sites. There's been a lot of work done to understand these sites, and we're only really still digging at the surface, but these sites are connected. The line from Göbekli Tepe to Sayburk is the solstice line, sunrise and sunset solstice line. It's almost a complete line of sight. There's one ridge where you would need some observers if you wanted to have a complete line of sight. The line from Göbekli Tepe to Karahan Tepe is the solstice line, and it is a direct line of sight. The lower plane of the lower Haran plain helps maintain the line of sight. Sayburk and Karahan Tepe are on the same latitude. This is not a coincidence. So this line is the equinox line. This is the Göbekli Tepe triangle. And the line down from Göbekli Tepe to the east-west line meets at a town called Kisa. Ki is a holdfast. We've already seen that in Sagitta, as we have Sa, what is fixed, a star. And this may be the origin of the word Giza. These four statues were discovered along the line of the Göbekli Tepe triangle. Each has a V-neck chevron. We saw that yesterday. And each holds their erect genitals. Erect is important in this respect. It is to stand. The solstice is a standstill. This is also the standstill of Sirius at its closest orbit to our sun. These are stellar observers, and I explain in the ancient language all these features in my book. Similar statues and gods exist in ancient Egypt. We even maintain this type of regalia today, sergeant stripes and other things that people wear around their necks. Going back further in time, 25,000 years, Sirius would appear in the same heavenly position as it is now. A human drawing exists of Sirius 20 to 25,000 years ago in this celestial location close to Taurus. This is the furthest part of the orbit where Sirius is moving most slowly. It's where it is now. At the Lascaux Caves in southwest France is the depiction of Sirius. This must be the most important message that ancient people wanted to make at that time, because there aren't a lot of other messages there. The straight line is the ecliptic. This means that 20,000 years ago, ancient people understood this conceptually. There is Sirius, denoted by a bird or hawk perched on a post, and alongside Sirius is an arrow on the ground. This is the same Aquila-Sagitta combination, denoting Sirius. And there seems to be a man lying on the ground with an erect genital. Taurus is from Tua, a bull. It's also a bison. And it means what bursts through. And I agree that the image depicts probably the Taurid's meteor shower bursting from the belly of Taurus. Sirius is the bird on the perch, and there is the arrow on the ground. So let's look at these, this depiction of these icons over the millennia. 20,000 years ago, we see Sirius depicted as a bird on a stick or perch and an arrow. Nevali Kori, 25 miles from Göbekli Tepe, we have a hawk on a perch. The Great Sirius Observatory in Gwynedd shows the location at both ends of its binary orbit, and in one location it is Aquila, the eagle, and Sagitta, the arrow. From the earliest proto-dynasties of Egypt, the pharaohs have written their name in a serif. It's only when we get to the middle second millennium that they start using cartouches, which are elongated shen rings. But the serif name depicts a hawk perched on a post. We've already seen this Babylonian boundary stone of 3,000 years, showing Sirius as a hawk on a post combined with the arrow. And on the Dendera zodiac, Sirius is shown as a hawk on a papyrus stem, and that's about 2,000 years old. And this imagery can be explained with the ancient language. An edin is a bird, and that's from ed, meaning velocity or speed, because in ancient times, the bird was the fastest moving animal. Eagles and hawks are employed because of their circling nature, and that's what their names mean. Perk means perch is a perk, and it implies per, meaning compact or to pervade, and a perch is also a gwail ging, implying guile, a skewer, spindle, or axis. That's what the imagery means. And again, we can see this up to the modern era. So we've already seen Heinrich III from the Holy Roman Emperor, the Prussian and Russian regalia, but also we have imagery of hawks perched on posts from North America, and this is a statue from Great Zimbabwe in Africa. So it's an incredibly old imagery. North American people talk of the thunderbird. Tuender means rises up and turns. People migrated to Australia 50,000 years ago with fragments of the same celestial myths, and then were isolated until the modern era. The star maps of Gwynedd display the knowledge of Sirius's binary orbit. In The Origin of the Zodiac, I suggested a Sirius telescope 10,000 megalithic yards long at a place called Chled Croin Uch. In The Origin Time, I suggest the opposite end of the binary orbit at Sagitta and Chlek Idris. Pig Idris, which is also part of the landscape in that location. Pig is a point, a dart, or a tip of an arrow. This constellation also is orientated exactly north-south from Pig Idris to Chlek Idris to Kada Idris. Lek also means flat or half width. It is the largest standing stone in Gwynedd and indicates the half part of the Sirius orbit. Lech and Led, Lech Idris and Cled Croin Urch are the two halves of the Sirius orbit. The stone circles of Gwynedd are built on the megalithic yard scale, and famous stone circles like Mole T. Ishaf were surveyed by Professor Alexander Thom, and this was one of the key stone circles that he surveyed to determine the megalithic yard scale. But I can tell you that the whole star map is built on the megalithic yard, megalithic rod and megalithic furlong scale. The megalithic scale is designed based on the turning of the earth. The stone circle Eglwys Gwythelod and Lech Croen Earth and Chapel are all on the same latitude, and they are separated by 1/4 and 1/3 of a degree longitude. The only reason you would create such accuracy in the landscape is to make celestial measurements. And I've been to a lot of these, or most of these stone circles, and they are not all on the tops of hills. Some of them are on sides of hills, a little bit offset. They have been purposefully designed into the landscape so that astronomers can return repeatedly to the same place and orientate themselves quickly. There are no Roman gods in the constellations. They preferred the planets. There are no Greek gods in the constellations. None of the 12 Olympians are in the heavens. No Zeus, Poseidon. There are two Greek demigods in the heavens, Hercules and Perseus, and they are reprints of older gods. There are no Egyptian gods in the constellations, and the only Babylonian gods are Enlil and Enki, and they are also reprints. The original constellations are what we would know as the ancient British gods, and they are recounted in the ancient British mythology called the Mabinogi. Mab means descended of. Mabinogi means the descendants. This is only part of the gods, but this is the main part of the gods. This would be equivalent to the prime Olympians in Greece, and they are all present in the heavens. So I've just highlighted these. So Minnegan conceived the universe. I don't know whether Minnegan is male or female, but they are at the, and I'm guessing they're at the extreme southern celestial pole. Min means will, desire. Gen is to generate. Min is also an edge, a brink. This is the will that created the universe. Minnegan created Bellymore that contains the universe, and his consort Don that maintains the flow of spirit on the Milky Way into the around the three planes. There they are, Bellymore and Don. They are now the constellations Cepheus and Cassiopeia. And when the Greeks came along, none of their gods are in the heavens. They really felt a bit uncomfortable about this, so they turned Cepheus and Cassiopeia upside down and created a myth that Cepheus and Cassiopeia boasted that their daughter Andromeda was so beautiful, more beautiful than the Nereid sea nymphs. Poseidon was so upset that he sent the Kraken out to destroy humankind, so that's why they chained Andromeda to the rock, and Perseus came to save them, all that sort of thing. The children of Bellymore and Don are Arianrhod and Gwydion. Oops. And they are over here. They are the Bootes and Virgo progenitors of humankind. Bellymore's son Caswallon is shown here. And these core gods sit on the north and south pole, celestial poles, the prime pole of the heavens. Arianrhod and Gwydion sit on the north pole of the galaxy, and Gwydion's twin brother, Gyfelthwy, sits on the south celestial pole of the galaxy, and Caswallon sits on the north ecliptic pole. These British gods, ancient British gods, they command all the poles of the heavens. And we know Caswallon commands the ecliptic pole because his name tells us. Cas to hold and keep. Gwael, we've already seen, is an axis or spindle, and Aon, we've already seen, means the flow of time. And this was then adopted as Hercules. The Mabinogi gods are all presented in the proper mythical location on the ground of the star maps of Gwynedd as well. You can go and identify all the existing Mabinogi gods on the ground from their myth. There are even standing stones there to denote some of the mythology. I have identified these locations in my book, The Origin of Time, and they all correlate with the constellations I had identified in The Origin of the Zodiac when I didn't know about the locations of the Mabinogi. All the constellations are now explained back to their origin. The star maps of Gwynedd is the most important ancient artifact on Earth because it connects us by language to our ancient ancestors. Thank you for listening to me today. Thank you for your time.